All right. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Welcome to our inaugural or our first assessment workshop. This is something that was provided as feedback from all of you that are most likely here today in terms of understanding a little bit more about the assessment, digging into it more as you incorporate it as a part of your hiring process. And we have a really applicable title, I suppose, as me and Mara just went over for our first inaugural episode. So today we're going to demystify the ideal traits assessment. I'm sure that's going to be a theme that we have as we continue this every first Tuesday of every month. So once we go through this session, if you enjoy it, which you will, make sure you mark the first Tuesday of every month off on your calendar at 2:00. We're going to make sure that we have that consistent pattern. So then you're always able to join and you know when it is going to be with little to no interruption. Now, as you've most likely seen me on webinars in the past or Success Spotlight, which is also a monthly webinar, my name is Nolan Duda. I'm the Client Experience Manager for IdealTraits. I've been with IdealTraits for the past, it'll be actually 6 years here in May. So coming up, which is very exciting. But within IdealTraits, I'm the Client Experience Manager, as I mentioned. So I oversee our sales, support, marketing, retention, and education departments and do everything possible to make sure that you're having a good experience and using the platform as you wish. So with us here today is a very special guest. We're going to be co-hosts in this series. So Mara, if you want to take a second to introduce yourself, I'm sure everyone's just excited to hear more about you.
Of course. All right. Thank you very much for having me on here. As Nolan said, my name is Mara. I'm the Learning and Development Coordinator here at IdealTraits. I have been here for 8.5 years. I started out as a recruiter, went to a manager. Now, as I said, I am the development coordinator. And I am in charge of everything that's part of the education content that comes here. For clients, for everybody that works here. And I also coordinate with all the departments at IdealTraits. So I work with the sales, I work with client success, and I work closely with Nolan to make sure that everybody is getting the content that they need and it's one message across the company.
And there you do, Mara. An important piece to the puzzle, right? Awesome. Well, Mara, again, appreciate you for taking the time to be here. I know that for IdealTraits, for those of you that may be a little unfamiliar with our company history, but IdealTraits in its inception back in 2012 was just an assessment company. All we did was on providing assessments to our clientele. And of course, now it's evolved into so much more, the job postings, the AI, the offer letters, the texting, the email, all of these great things that are provided within IdealTraits. But we are, both Mara and I suppose I can speak with both of us on this topic, are very passionate about the assessment and helping you better incorporate it into your process and answering the questions that you have. So really the glory of this is going to be that if it was brought to us as a recommendation from a lot of our clients to start doing things like this to bring more assessment training to the forefront for all of you. But really, it's going to be most successful when we're talking about things that you all want to hear. We had about 195 people register for this webinar, which is really exciting because based on what we can see here, a lot of you have tuned in and have actually joined here today to join us live. So if you have questions, I want to remind you that the Q&A section is there for you to be able to ask those questions and we can get specific answers for you based off of the things that you're looking to find out more information on. But as you saw in the emails that we sent out today, last week, or over the last couple of weeks promoting this session, what we're going to talk about today specifically is going to be understanding the 4 core personality dimensions. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to go through assessment scores. Sometimes you'll see a 7 in there, a 52, a 92. So what do those numbers mean? If someone has a 7, should I be weary of that and stay away from it, or sort of just giving you more explanation on the numbers that you're seeing and helping you interpret it then? We're also going to talk about how the traits of specific personalities translate into job responsibilities. So we're sort of going to work back from there. Mara and I are going to talk about customer service representatives and salespeople and talk a little bit about the personality traits, that you see in them most commonly in a general sense. Your, of course, immediate situation may be a little bit different, and you may have experienced this for yourself too. And then lastly, we're going to talk about avoiding hiring missteps and common biases. So this is where we're going to start. And each month, we're going to work to bring good material that you can benefit from on a monthly basis. Okay. And a lot of it hopefully is going to stem off of, again, the feedback and the questions that you have. So when we do send out the recording, either later today or tomorrow, there is going to be a survey in there where you're going to have an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about your feedback and things that you want us to cover and talk about. So then we can make the content specific to you. Won't be able to cover everything, but we're going to do our best to make it happen for you. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background on how this session is going to work, I see we did already receive a question from Ken. Ken, yes, the session is being recorded, as I just mentioned, and your CEO will absolutely receive the recording either later today or tomorrow to definitely make sure that they're able to hear from this and benefit from it as well. And then before we kick off here, I did want to remind you all of our referral program. So I did just put this in the chat. If you do know somebody, whether they're an insurance agent, a dealership, or any type of business that's out there that could benefit from the IdealTraits platform, more specifically the assessment, obviously, that we're here to talk about, fill out that form, let us know, and we'll send you a $20 Amazon gift card as a thank you. But, Mara, let's get into it. So, first thing is talking a little bit more about the 4 core personality dimensions. So, this, of course, commonly known as motivation and drive, persuasive and convincing, structure and routine, and then, of course, thorough and compliance. Now, I do have an example pulled up, Marv. It'd be helpful for me to show it now, or just direct me on when you would like me to do so. But in terms of those 4 dimensions, or 4 categories, if you will. Let's start at the top, motivation and drive. What does the motivation drive typically tell us? What should we be looking for here? And what does that typically indicate in a candidate or in a current employee?
So for the motivation drive, what you're looking at is it's measuring how someone is, their goal and results oriented, their ambition. So it's looking at, do they hustle or do they prefer harmony?
Mm,
When you're looking at their persuasiveness and convincing, you're looking at their relationship skills, their influence, their communication skills. So can they connect instantly with almost anybody that they meet? Or is it more that they're observant, more quiet? When you're looking at their structure routine, what is their preference for consistency and organization? Do they like to plan or do they just like to wing it?
mm,
And then when it comes to thorough and compliant, um, what's their attention to detail and how do they like to adhere to those rules? So are they a rule follower or are they somebody that creatively stretch the boundaries?
got it.
So just in a nutshell, pretty simple.
For sure. Yep. And I know we did just get a question here if I'm sharing my screen. I'm not yet, but I can now. More of it will be beneficial. And what I do have to show is just my sample assessment. So if you've attended a Success Spotlight webinar before, you know that I talk about how sorry, wrong screen. I talk about how the persistent is, of course, the best personality trait. Here's the proof. Nolan Duda, persistent. Here we are. So Mara, when we're talking about these categories, you're talking about motivation, drive, persistent, convincing, structure, routine, thorough compliance. So you sort of just went through a little bit more about sort of what that can mean, and we can send out information too, so people are able to put that and keep that because it can be hard to remember. But in terms of like your structure and routine, I believe you said it's, do they like to plan it or do they like to wing it? So it
Mhm.
sounds like, or it looks like, me being an 11, it's probably more on the page of winging it, right? But does that necessarily mean that it's a bad thing, right? Because a lot of the times you can see sort of your neat support here in the yellow. You can see the low score. Tell us a little bit more in ease, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are looking at this. So, like, I don't want somebody who wings it, right?
You're
But
right.
tell us a little bit more about, I guess, how we should be taking in these results and why, when you see an area of neat support, it isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm. So when you're looking at a score, what the ranges are is for low, it's 0 to 30. This might be where somebody is a little less comfortable.
Mm,
Um, but just because you have somebody who's in a low score, what I like to say is with every weakness, there is a strength.
okay.
When you have a mid range, uh, those scores are 31 to 59. That where this person is more adaptable, but they could use more support in those areas. Um, and then for high, the range is 60 to 100.
Okay.
That's where the person has their natural strengths. That's where it's going to come out more when they're under pressure.
Mm, okay. Perfect. All right. And then in terms of those four core categories or those four dimensions, I know we gave a little bit of information there, but is there any like more in-depth information that you want to give on like motivation and drive? Like what else can it contain? What else can it contain in terms of not just motivation and drive, but the four categories themselves too as well? Like, is there more than just that sort of swinging pendulum that could go one way or the other?
As far as with the ranges,
So it could be the ranges or just the category itself, right? So again, if I go back to structure and routine, you mentioned does somebody like to plan or does somebody like to wing it? What if we do see somebody who has a score that's 50, right?
hmm
Like where does that take us? What do we do with that? Is that just somebody who can kind of prefer to do both or be flexible
hmm
with both? Or how do we interpret a result more like that? As you can see here with my thorough and compliance, we see it at a 46. So it's pretty much just middle of the road for all three of my scores. So how can we go about that interpretation?
okay. So just going back up at the top for the motivation and drive,
Yep.
you see that it's 100. So it is shows that it's your natural strength. That is going to show that you are highly motivated, that you thrive on a challenge, and that you like independence.
Got it.
So that's that's your most dominant trait. Just to point out, when I'm looking at the assessments, I always want to go to the most dominant trait first and then work my way down.
Okay.
So the next one that I would typically go to then is the thorough and compliant. And what this shows me with the 46 is that you are more balanced, logical, observant, and that you're willing to follow the structure. Now, you were saying, with it being more in the middle, what that means is that it's going to be what the situation calls for. So, if it means that you have to be more detailed and follow the rules, that's what the situation calls for. That's what you're going to do. If you need to be more independent and just, do it, that's what the situation calls for. That's what you're going to do. Then going to the persuasive and convincing, um, you may struggle a little bit when it comes to dealing with people or engaging them. Again, you're going to be a little bit quieter, but that observing can come in very handy when you're dealing with people, that you can really take in the situation and the environment that you're looking at.
Okay.
For the structure and routine, you really don't want to have to deal with routines, or be very rigid in your structure, which is, with the position that you currently have, that's good.
Mhm.
You do need to, as we say, wing it. There really can't be a plan in your position.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a couple of funny things in there, and I apologize for laughing because again, folks, of course, this is my personality result. But what I'm able to see when Mara was describing really that thorough compliance, when people ask me, it's like, "Are you spontaneous or do you prefer to have a set plan?" I oftentimes will answer, and I will just say, "Well, it depends on like, is there a set plan or is there not? Because if there isn't, then I can roll with the punches. But if there is a set plan, I would prefer to of course, go by that plan and make sure that we follow it to a T. So it makes total sense there and a really good explanation and a really good example for that middle of the road score, right, Mara? Where it's like,
hmm
it just like if the situation calls for it, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Someone who's capable of being a little bit flexible there. But if you see, I would imagine, Mara, let's pretend for a throw in compliance that this is instead of this being 46, let's say this is my 100.
hmm
I would imagine then that you're throwing compliance and there is no spontaneous, right? Like it is set plan needs to be that set plan. But
hmm
tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So if the thorough compliance was at 100, these are the rules. Like these are the rules, these are the guidelines, and there's no swaying from it.
Okay.
Um, and they want to know, or if yours was 100, you would want to know what's expected of you on a daily basis. You would ask a million questions. And if you couldn't get your questions answered, if you didn't know what the expectations were, you would just stop,
Okay.
until you got everything answered. You're just not moving forward.
Mm, yeah. That would be tough for me. But all right, that makes a lot of sense, right? So, okay. Now, typically, like for our sales or service, represented folks, we're usually looking at, salespeople typically have, a high score in motivation and drive and the high score in persuasive and convincing. But with persistent being a sales personality, we don't see that represented within one of my scores, right? So, I guess this is kind of hopping into a little bit about the job responsibilities. But could you explain that a little bit more? Like, how can a persistent be good in a sales position when their persuasive and convincing score is at a 32, when you had mentioned like this may be a position or an opportunity for them to sort of struggle a little bit with having conversations with people at first?
What's great about a persistent is that, just like their name, they're very persistent. They're going to keep working uh, that relationship.
Yeah.
They're going to keep contacting those people. The persuasive and convincing, one of the greatest fears of somebody who has high persuasive and convincing is rejection.
Mm,
So that's probably going to slow them down if they hear the word no over and over again. Like I said, that's going to slow them down. With a persistent, since they have that low persuasive and convincing, it just kind of rolls off of them and they recover quickly and they just keep going. They're in it for the long haul when it comes to building relationships because, again, they're going to keep going after them and just keep pushing those relationships. And as they get to know the person, they're going to be opening up to those people and building strong relationships with them.
mm. Makes a lot of sense. All right, perfect. So, just to recap here, Mara, let's go through those four main personality dimensions again. If you want to provide that description, like we, I do want to get away from sharing the screen here, so that we're not just hyper focused on the persistent personality, and that, of course, is a little bit of my fault. But recapping again, so motivation and drive, persuasive and convincing, structure and routine, thorough compliance. Can you go back through those explanations, a little quick ad libs that you gave for each one in terms of the explanation? Okay.
So when it comes to motivation and drive, when you're looking at that, the is this person goal and results oriented? So do they prefer to hustle or do they prefer harmony? When it comes to persuasive and convincing, that's dealing with how the person deals with relationships, how they deal with communication, how they deal with influence. So are they able to connect instantly with people around them, or are they more observant? When it comes to structure and routine, what is their preference for consistency? What is their preference for routine? So, do they plan or do they just wing it? And then when it comes to thorough and compliant, that has to do with how do they deal with the attention to details? How do they deal with rules? So, are they the rule follower or do they just stretch the boundaries?
Got it. Okay, perfect. And again, I want to get back sort of away from the screen because I know I wasn't able to see the questions. I had imagined that we would have a bunch of questions, which we do, which is fantastic, right? So again, hopefully that gives you all sort of that baseline, right, where you know what like the categories are for. The reason why I'm unsharing that screen is because I don't want to get hyper focused on the persistent because it's not the only personality that you all are seeing. Maybe the best one, but it's not the only one that you're seeing, right? So that at that point, sort of taking a step back here to sort of understand it at full view is what we're going to look at. But let's see here. Um, let's see. What scores are we hoping for in each category? So, Mara, I think that would be a pretty subjective question, depending on the role that they're
Hmm.
hired for, right? Because
Correct.
what you wouldn't want to see is like a very high, potentially, like just to provide a baseline example, but like you wouldn't want to see necessarily like a very high score in thorough and compliance or um, structure and routine in terms of it being the most dominant trait for a salesperson. Am I correct
Hmm.
in saying that typically?
Correct. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, Tom, I think it depends on what you're hiring for. If you want to shoot in the chat, let us know what you're hiring for. We can kind of tell you what to look for in that sense. And of course, that is, again, something that's a part of our agenda here to talk about jobs and traits and sort of where we see them aligning. So, a great question for us to transition to that in a second. But if you want to pop in and let us know what type of position you're hiring for, I think that will help us answer your question because it will differ. Let's see here, Mara. Bridget, will you all be helping us to determine these aspects of the result, or is there a worksheet where we will have the underlying traits to help us out? So I believe that we have some help center articles, right, Mara? Maybe understanding the personalities is coming to mind to me, but anything else, tools or resources within the system, Mara, that you can point to that might help Bridget and the rest of the folks that are wondering the same thing be able to get this type of information?
Yeah, we have plenty of help center articles um, that help break down the assessments. There's some of them that go very much in depth on each individual personality. Some of them also talk about what good interview questions that you can also ask
Yeah.
about as well.
Interview questions are huge, especially when they're behavioral and personality based, right? And get that person's true identity sort of coming through. But then also too, Bridget, like if you're feel as if the help center article, maybe you're more of a visual learner, want to talk through it. In your account, you have the ability to schedule a support call or an assessment training call with our team, where they can sort of walk through a little bit of this stuff for you at a high level. But exciting stuff, Mar. You and I have been working on some more deep dive stuff that we're going to be launching here soon, which is going to be really exciting too. So stay tuned for that, Bridget. But in the meantime, we can point you in the direction of some good help center articles if you want to reach out to our team via the chat or send Mara and I an email after this, or you, of course, have the ability to access that help center stuff too. But all right, Miguel, what does it mean when there is a big difference in category score between self perception, under pressure, and others' perception? It's a really good question here, Mara. So, when you see a big gap, between those three things, like someone perceives themselves as very motivated, but then under pressure, it's showing a little bit different. What typically does that mean?
Um, it can mean several different things. It's what you want to see is, obviously all the numbers as close together as you can because that means that they know themselves pretty well. Um, it could mean that the person was going through too quickly. It could mean that the person um was trying to answer based on the job role that they think that they were applying to, that they were trying to game the system. But when you have those numbers like that, you can obviously tell something was going on. It's when there's that big discrepancy like that, there was something that was going on. Um, so you're not going to get those straightforward um, results like you would normally do.
Yeah, yeah. So for Miguel, when you see those, Mara, when you see those differences, and let's say it's a drastic difference, you think that it was, there's something impacting that said score, whether it's
Mhm.
a, a purposeful, I suppose, manipulation of the result, or it could be accidental too, depending on maybe a conflict of sort of what they think they want to do or what maybe their personality is a good fit for. Was that fair to say?
Mhm. I
Okay.
also even recently came across somebody that, um, they were overthinking things too much.
Mhm.
And you can really tell that if it takes them a long time to take the assessment, if you happen to notice that as well. They may be going back and reviewing their answers, changing them around. So if this is somebody that you are interested in, just call them and talk to them about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to toss that person aside.
Yeah. All right. We're getting a lot of questions. And I'm trying to keep up. Sure, you see a roll with it too. All right. We're going to try to get to everybody. I love that you guys have so many questions. And again, this is great, right? Because this is what we're here for, is to sort of just directly answer the questions that you have. And I encourage you to ask it because there's a good chance that there's a lot of other people that are wondering the same thing, right? So ask those questions, fire them in here. We'll work to get to everybody here in the next 20 minutes that we have left. Let's see here. So Stephen or Stefan, I hope it's one of those two. where can we find the definitions of each category and the different personality traits online? So if you go to the Ideal Traits website and you go under, I believe it's the help tab, I think it is at the top. There is an opportunity for you to go to the help center, or maybe it's resources, maybe it's the resources tab. I can check in a second to confirm and let you know. But when you go to that tab at that point, then you're going to have an option to go to the help center. And then if you type into that little search bar, understanding the personalities, that's a really good article. But then also, too, if you reach out to us after, we can make sure that we give you specific instructions on those respective categories. And maybe more, that's something that we add into the email that we send out to everybody after
Mhm.
is that little one liner that you had mentioned for each category. We'll have Kelly include that in the email after so then everybody has that on hand. So we'll get that to you for sure. But understanding the personalities is a good one to pull from. And I can actually go grab it here in a second, and then I will put it in the chat for everybody who's like wanting that and wants to take action on reading that article. So I'll send that out. Mara, we had a question from Garrett. I don't really understand the difference between self-perception under pressure versus how others see you. What should I be doing with those differences? That's a really great question. Thank you, Garrett, for that one. Yeah. So, Mara, if you want to break down sort of the difference between those three top categories and maybe stress which one's the most important, I think that would be a
Sure.
really good question to head there.
All right. So, self perception is how you view yourself. Others' perception is how others view you. And then under pressure is your response to stress or behavioral tendencies when you are challenged. The most important one that you should be looking at is the under pressure column. I'm not saying that the other ones aren't important, but the one that you should be really concentrating on is the under pressure. The way that you can look at it is the self perception would be um, who you are at home. Others' perception is who you are, like out with your friends, out in public. And under pressure is who you are in the office.
Perfect. All right, cool. And I apologize. The article that I was trying to think from is profile outcomes at a glance. I apologize. Shout out to Shade who's listening and had sent me that. That's going to make it very easy for me to put this in the chat here. But Garrett, hopefully that answers your question sort of when you're taking a look at them, right? Of course, self-perception is how I view myself. Under pressure is kind of when push comes to shove. And then others' perceptions is how Mara would perceive me, right? Mara, is that a good
Hmm.
sort of
Yep.
yeah, and what you just mentioned? Great. All right, perfect. Great question, Garrett. I think that's one that a lot of people may have been wondering themselves. So really good. So John had mentioned that he's running late and he's looking for a salesperson and have an applicant that is a researcher. What do you think, Mara? So I guess a little disclaimer before we get into this one, right? The good fit for your office is going to be specific to your situation and what the position demands. So to be honest, it's a question that we're going to give an answer to, but it probably is better served for you to reach out to our team so they can have a conversation with you about what type of sales position you have offered. Because for all of you that are on here, 100 plus of you, that looks different for each of you. And in a general sense, I would say it's fair to say, Mara, that a researcher isn't one of those optimal personalities that you would generally look for in a sales role,
Hmm.
right? That's fair to
Right.
say. But I will say, one of my best friends who works at an Allstate agency here in Michigan, he's a researcher and he's great at his job. Writes about 40 to 50 to 60 items a month. But what that position demands at his office is different than what yours will look like. So without us having information in terms of what type of sales position it is and what's needed out of that person, it's hard for us to give an answer to that. But what I will say, and Mara, I think you agree, is that a researcher, the personality result is typically not one of the recommended sales roles, right? That is closer, persistent, sales leader, salesperson, and a competitor with high motivation and drive. Well, again, I would want to add to that. Again, we don't really want to give you a yes or a no, John, because again, it depends on your situation. So maybe it's best for us to meet after. But Mara, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It really depends on what that person is going to be doing in the office. Whenever I speak to a client or when I'm training somebody here when they're going to be talking to clients, that's one of the first questions that we ask is what are their responsibilities, what exactly it is that you're looking for. That way, you are going to be, when you have them take the assessment, those are the traits that you're going to be looking for.
Mhm.
So it could be that you are looking for somebody who has high thorough compliance because that's part of their responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. Yep. And for all of those that were looking for that profile outcomes at a glance article, I did just put that in the chat. So you should see that in the question and answer section. So if you want to pull that, bookmark it, or keep it open, should be able to quickly go through that. And again, if you have any questions off of that, reach out to our team. That's what we're here for. But all right, perfect. So good there. What are the best roles for a consistent? That's a question from Brian, Mara. Again, vaguely. We can speak to this pretty vaguely, Brian, but generally speaking, Mara, what do you recommend for a consistent?
For a consistent, they have that high structure and routine. And then they have the mid ranges in the motivation drive, high persuasive and convincing, high thorough and compliance. Um, usually with the consistent, um, they require a lot of hand holding. And as their name suggests, they are pretty consistent in their performance level. So you always know what you're going to get out of them. So just be aware of that. Um, but I would say probably customer service. They're probably not going to want to be getting on the phone a whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, and they're going to need extra training and hand holding. Um, but once they get the experience under their belt, I would probably say customer service.
Mm, perfect. And you mentioned in the part of that, they probably won't get on the phone a whole lot. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I mean, Brian may be wondering, like, hey, well, the customer service role in my office, there's a lot on the phone too. So are you saying like specifically like cold calling, like outbound reach out, or I guess what did you mean by be on the phone a whole lot?
Yeah, they can be more quiet. It would take some more mentoring and coaching, training,
Mm,
persistence on your part to kind of get them to get on the phone.
yeah.
They're not going to really do it themselves. So it's a task that you have to give to them because they have that high structure routine. That's going to have to be part of their routine. So when they come in the morning, you're like, okay, from this time to this time, you're going to have to be making calls. So
Mm,
reaching out to people, give them a script, let them know this is what they're going to be doing. As long as this is their routine, that's what they're comfortable with. They have their script, they have their tasks. That's what they're going to be doing.
yeah.
Just to let them wing it or do it themselves or whatever. It's not going to be, it's too far out of their comfort zone to do that.
Mhm. Love it. All right. Perfect. Andrea, I know that you had asked a question and it's good to see you. Not necessarily, but good to see that you're here. You had asked about interview questions for personality trait. I had replied back to that with a link that you can go to. That link should open up and it should give you access to a bunch of different articles that are personality specific. So if you're looking for interview questions for an organizer or for a salesperson, should be linked there and should be able to find that. If you need some help there, just throw another question at the chat and I'll make sure I give you some clarity there. But Helen had asked a question, Laura, and she says, is there a time when you see an assessment does not fit the person that you met in person? Is this a time of day they took an assessment or something else, right? Like, generally speaking, Mara, when we talk about assessments, sometimes environment or big life changes can impact sort of the results. But for the most part, I mean, in terms of the IdealTraits assessment, the validity rating is, 92.6. So generally pretty spot on. But I know that in the interviews we've done for IdealTraits, we have interviewed some candidates, or we have reviewed that in a video interview where we're like, oh, maybe it's a little bit different, but generally it isn't a massive difference. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we've interviewed a lot of people together. So, yeah, I would have to say that it's been pretty consistent across the board.
Mm, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, yeah, Helen, I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but generally speaking, like someone's completing the assessment, it's going to be pretty accurate to what you'd expect. If you're seeing a very different side of them in an interview, I would think that they're trying to in that interview be someone that they're not, you know? And oftentimes, Mara, I think that that is something that is often referred to as like fake it till you make it. And that usually has a
Mhm.
burnout rate that's pretty quick turnaround, generally between like the 90 and 100. Could you hear me, Mara? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It just kind of blipped out.
Yeah, sorry, my phone's ringing, and yeah. But anyways, like you see their natural personality come out around 90 to 120-day mark. That's why you'll have somebody who's like super excited to get started in a sales role. Won't start. Well, really start working pretty hard, and then within the first like 3 months or 4 months in, then you'll start to see sort of a different side. Like the production we'll do a total 180, right?
Right.
So generally, that's when you see someone trying to fake it till they make it in that interview, which is why using the assessment is important, because the
Mhm.
last thing you want is to just hire somebody based off of what you see on their resume and what they're telling you. Wow, what's this speech writing? But anyways, okay. Sorry about that. All right. So Madison asked a question. Madison, good to see you as well. What part of the assessment determines the personality profile result? That's a good question.
That would be the under pressure. That's why we tell you to focus on that particular column.
Makes sense. Short and sweet there from Mara. Very nice. All right, Madison, I see you have another question, which is great. Is it possible to have a sales-oriented personality result with low motivation score?
Um, are you talking about having them be are you talking about having it be under pressure, a sales personality, and then motivation drive on the self-perception? Is that what she's saying?
Yeah, I think she's asking, is it possible to have a sales-oriented personality result with low motivation? Yeah, so like with a low motivation score, let's say 50 or below, is it possible to have a sales personality with a motivation below 50, let's say?
Um, I would if that's what she's talking about, I would probably say, um, that it would I would probably proceed with caution on that one.
Mm,
I don't really think that that's, not seeing the numbers, I really can't determine that, um, but, I mean, I've talked to plenty of people in the past that have, um, been successful right out of the gate, but like you said, it's like, 60, 90 days, and then you get to 120 days, and then they start falling off. So, I would be really cautious about somebody who, under pressure is that sales personality, and then that self-perception, it's below 50.
yeah. And I think that Madison's question is more specific to like like the oftentimes recommended sales personalities, right? So like we have your persistent, your closer, your sales leader, your salesperson, and your competitor with high motivation. I think
Mhm.
the question is it possible to have one of those assessment results with a
Oh, below
motivation
50?
lower 50? Yeah, no.
No.
Yep. So typically, again, Madison, those are going to be our recommended sales personalities. So those are folks that have that high motivation and drive that oftentimes have the ability to, have that goal oriented nature that Mark talked about, before, right? So good questions, though. Great. All right. Miguel, should we consider the average of three or take the two most similar numbers? So I think this question is specific to self perception under pressure and others' perception. I think he's asking if you should take the average of the three or maybe just the two that are the closest. But I think that the answer would be not to combine them at all, right? It would be to mainly focus on the under pressure and then make sure that in the self perception and the others' perception, there isn't a giant variance. Is that fair, Mara?
Yes, that would be correct. Mhm.
Yeah. So Miguel, don't combine those numbers at all. Just use the under pressure as your guiding light there, your North Star, and then pay attention to those outside, that self perception, others' perception. If you see a big variance there, it's important for you to ask questions, right? Like if you're interviewing that candidate, or maybe your phone screening them, or maybe they just completed a video interview, ask them. It's like, hey, I see that there's a big variance between how you perceive yourself in terms of your motivation and how really it happens. Like if their main perception is like 90, but then their motivation and drive is rather low, it's something to obviously draw attention to and ask the question. But great question from you, Miguel. Thank you. All right. When you get an inconsistent, should we ask them to take the assessment again? I think that's pretty cut and dry. I think the answer is yes there if you feel as if it's necessary. But Mara, if you want to add anything there.
What I usually tell people is that I would speak to the candidate first, to make sure this is somebody that you actually want to move forward with. And then also speak to the candidate on whether or not they want to retake the assessment. The last thing that you want to do is waste their time
Mm.
and your time.
Yeah.
I've run into people who don't want to retake the assessment and they've moved on. And then I've interviewed others that I was interested in, interviewed them, and then I didn't want to move forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to just meet, just interview that person and see which way things go.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Um, Perfect. Let's see here. Should we stick to sales leaders and avoid networkers for high producing sales reps? Um, I mean, I think it's fair to say, Mara, that we wouldn't tell you to ever stay away from a specific personality or go after only a specific personality. I think that it's important to establish the assessment as a part of your process, as a culmination of multiple different things. If you talk to a networker and you feel confident in their ability to work in your office as a high performing sales rep, then all good and well. I know plenty of agencies that will go out and seek networkers specifically, and some that won't hire them at all. Again, I think it's up to personal preference, and it's used as an adage to your hiring process. But in terms of sales leaders, I mean, sales leaders are, of course, are one of those sought after personalities that ultimately are a good fit generally for those sales representative roles. But not all sales leaders are created the same. Not all networkers are created the same, which is why it's important for you to interview the candidate, ask them those behavior based and personality based questions, ask them about their past experience, their accomplishments, why they feel as if they would be a good fit for your role, and to have them give specific examples. But Mara, please add anything else in there that you feel is it's important.
No, I agree completely. Um, I think the most important thing when you're dealing with a networker, or with anybody that's working for you, but specifically with a networker,
Yeah.
if you want them to remain strong in sales,
Mhm.
is that you continue on with that coaching and mentoring, just to make sure that they're not falling back into any bad habits that they had before or would get.
Mm. Yeah. Makes sense. Perfect. We have so many questions here. We got a bunch more to get through at just limited time, folks. So I promise I see them all here. If we don't get through them all, I promise that we'll be able to answer them at some point. Can you restate what others' perception means? Yeah, Mara. So if you just want to recap on what others' perception was.
Yeah, others' perception is how others view you. So I think Nolan said, how I would view him.
Mhm.
So it would be like how friends would view him, how others in public view him. That's what the other's perception is.
Yeah. Outstanding. Perfect. And I know we talked about this is a good question from Tia. We talked about the sales personalities that are recommended, but Tia asked a great question. What are the top three personalities that are best suited for customer service? There isn't necessarily a top three, Mara, is there? I think it would be six that we would generally recommend would fall into that customer service bucket. Mara, if you want to provide that, if you want to provide that, those top six customer service personalities, I believe it is, that would be great.
Mhm. Again, it all comes down to the responsibilities that you are wanting them to do. So we have knowledgeable, we have nurture, organizer, perfectionist, researcher, um, and then consistent.
Can you hear my phone ringing? It's just it just keeps ringing. I don't know what's that for me. I don't know why it's happening, but some people maybe they have more questions that they want us to answer. But perfect. Tia, hopefully that gives you insight into those customer service personalities to take a look at. If you do want more information on this, again, reach out to us. Like we're happy to go over these things with you. All right, Whitney. Is there a list of suggested jobs by personality trait? Is there an article
Not yet. That's something that we are currently working on.
in the process of creating? Great question, Whitney. What I would recommend is reach out to our team and they'd be happy to sort of go through a little bit of these examples with you. But again, stay tuned for us to put that together for you. All right. Karen, are there any profiles or personality traits that are a red flag? A couple things. Maybe just inconsistent would be it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, like I said, for every when I was talking earlier, for every weakness, there's a strength. For every strength, there's a weakness. So, I mean, it's kind of up to you on what you consider a red flag. For if you have somebody who has high motivation and drive, you got somebody who's very competitive, aggressive, assertive, but impatience comes with that. Maybe the person can be quick to anger as well. So that could be a red flag for you.
Yeah.
It's not like the person's like walking around popping off all the time, but that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. 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 All right. Outstanding. All right. Ariana, do you happen to have any advice for getting more people to answer the assessments other than emailing and calling them? I'm having lots of people just skip the assessment and ghosting me. This is a fantastic question. Um, so, a couple of things I would recommend here. Sounds like you're calling, sounds like you're emailing. I would recommend reaching out and investigating our SMS texting tool. Ariana, it's shown to be about 60 times faster than emailing. And of course, if I was to ask all of you the question, hey, if I texted or emailed you right now, which one are you going to check first? Oftentimes the answer is text message. So then at that point, equipping that into your process, you can either do our ACE bot, which is an automated candidate engagement bot, which will send out automated text messages for you to let them know to complete the assessment. Equip our SMS texting tool, which will then you can customize what you want to send out, and then you can create an automated workflow to have those text messages sent out automatically. Or, of course, as we talked about on Success Spotlight in the month of March, equipping our virtual hiring assistant program, which is an add-on to your Ideal Traits subscription, to have us, Ideal Traits, call, email, and text the candidates for you. On Tuesdays, we do our manager meetings, and through a basic Ideal Traits account, the assessment completion rate is about 35%. So again, to your point, Ariana, you've seen a lot of people not complete it. When you equip virtual hiring assistant, it goes up to about 55%. So if you're looking to get more assessments completed, my first recommendation, which isn't going to cost you much at all on a monthly basis, it's going to be like, I think it's $39. It might even be less than that, is the texting, the SMS texting tool. And then if you're looking to just have us take over the communication and as a total and have us start working that process for you, so then you get that time back on your plate, then the virtual hiring assistant program is going to be a really good fit for you, and definitely encourage you to inquire about that. But um, it really is about, those text messages can really boost your assessment completion. But I would encourage you to be careful there, because the last thing you want to do is just spend all your time reaching out to candidates who really aren't going to be ever completing the assessment or ever returning your phone calls. Sometimes that can be good information, but in today's market, definitely recommend proactively reaching out to them if they're not completing it, so you get as many people completing it as possible, but also know when to give up on those people too. All right. So great question. I know we're over time. So again, to be respectful of everybody's time, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can here. Probably what, Mara, in the next 10 minutes or so.
Mhm.
Um, I know there's more coming in as I continue to speak, which is a really good thing. So thank you all for staying and contributing, but know that we will get this wrapped up here before 3 o'clock if you're still hanging on. Um, another question. Oh, this isn't a question. So I found that if someone completed the assessment, click on personality, to the left, scroll down under results summary and click learn more. That will give you additional information. Yes. If you're looking for more information on the assessment, or you're even wanting to watch a video, you can do that. If you look under the results summary, this is really great. Thank you, Stephen, for bringing this up. Under the results summary, there's going to be that learn more button. If you click that, it's going to open up a help center article that will tell you more about that respective personality. And as I mentioned, you can even watch that quick 2 to 3 minute video that will give you more information too, as well, if you're more of a visual learner like myself, right? All right. Really great. Thank you for that, Garrett. Here's an interesting question. Love when they start like that. Would love to get an answer based on experience. When a sales personality doesn't work out in a sales role, what about the assessment could have indicated that? I know it's never a guarantee. Just curious if there are any subtleties to look out for among closers, salesperson, sales leader, and of course, the almighty persistent. Yes, thank you, Garrett, for that. And he did say that. For anybody who's wondering, I did not just add that in there as an addendum. But I think it's hard for us to answer that question, Garrett. It is a very interesting one, but we don't know the person we're interacting with them, Mara. So I think it's hard for us to answer that. Maybe that's something that you could take a look at. If Garrett has a specific example, Mara, that you could send over to us, Garrett, and I'm sure Mara would be happy to take a look and
Mhm.
sort of if there's anything out of the ordinary that she was able to witness. But as we talked about it as before, as I've mentioned, Not all closers are built the same. Not all salespeople are built the same. Not all sales leaders are built the same, and certainly not all persistents are built the same. But sometimes there's a lot of outside circumstances that could be affecting someone's performance or their personality or their time at your office. And sometimes it's okay to just look at that as a learning experience. But generally speaking, you're going to find that if you're got a sales role that involves a lot of cold calling, you're going to want to look for those roles that have that high motivation and drive. But Mara, anything you want to add in on that?
Um, again, like what you said, without seeing the person, seeing the numbers, without really knowing what the role is, I can't say a whole lot on that. But just asking a lot of questions during the interview, um, just I like to call it the toolbox. Just looking at everything that the candidate provides for you. They do
Yeah.
tell you a story in their resume, their short answer questions, especially their assessment.
Yeah. Yeah. Go. All right. Madison Rowe here says that they love networkers. So the Vlad office, Farmers Insurance, fans of networkers. So if you're looking for someone who goes after those networkers, Madison and Vlad are part of that crew. Nikki, can you repeat the CSR top six? And can the networker be a good fit for a CSR? So Mara, if you want to go through those top six recommended personalities for the customer service role, based off of personality, right? And then we can talk a little bit about networkers being a good fit for CSR as well.
So there's the knowledgeable organizer, nurturer, perfectionist, researcher and consistent.
Yeah, there we go. All right. And then how we feel about networkers for the customer service role. And usually a pretty bubbly personality, but what do you think?
Mhm. Yeah, I've talked to plenty of clients that love having networkers in their office. Like you said, they have a bubbly personality, love speaking to clients.
Sure.
Clients love speaking to them.
Sure.
Um, I would caution about the fact that, they have low structure routine, low thorough compliance. So details and routine are big on their list. So you will have to make sure that you stay on top of them for their tasks. Um, so if you're okay doing that, making sure you're giving them a list and staying on top of them, then that's fine. It could work out.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Perfect. And again, reach out to us because we want to diagnose your specific situation. So let us know. We're happy to help. Michelle, we hire for warehouse as well as sales and service. Having personality guidelines for other positions would be helpful. Yeah, very true. And that would be something that we would want to help you with on a specific level, Michelle, right? So reach out to us. Mara and I are both here to help you, especially with your unique situation where you're looking at that. Would be happy to sort of understand a little bit more about what you're looking for in terms of positions within your warehouse and how we'd be able to best help you. So please, 30 minutes and we'd be able to get you a lot of information moving in the right direction. All right. Okay. So they just keep coming in, Mark. I'm sorry. I'm trying. All right. Trying to catch up. All right. Here we go. When dealing with hiring, okay, here we go. This is actually in addition to, so Jameson came in. When dealing with hiring warehouse workers, it sounds like their own compliance and structure routine would be the best categories for this position. Motivation and drive can fall in there too. Would you think either of these categories would be best for this in your past experience, if you wouldn't mind answering? So I think that I don't know if I'm sorry, Jameson. I don't know if you and Michelle are part of the same organization, but um, reach out to us about that specific situation because I think understanding a little bit more about job responsibilities specifically dealing within the warehouse would give us more insight into what we could kind of recommend or not. And again, the reason why we say that is because we don't want to give you just a vague recommendation and then it be off base or wrong, right? So the last thing that we want to do as a part of these sessions is give you information that you take, implement, and it be wrong information. Okay. So Jameson, Michelle, both of you, please reach out to us. Don't be shy. We'd be happy to set aside time to meet. All right, Stephen, if you hire someone, would you recommend having them take the assessment again, say on an annual review to see if their personality has changed over time? Really good question. What do you think, Mark?
Yes, I recommend everybody retake the assessment every 1 to 2 years, and also if you're considering them for a promotion.
There you go. Bingo. All right. Tia, my best hire for customer service is a networker. There you go. Right. So we've got advocate for But Madison had mentioned that she loves hiring networkers, and Tia giving a specific recommendation for customer service. Again, there's two agencies or businesses that are talking about how they like networkers. So great. May work for you, but understand that, it isn't a one size fits all. So make sure that you go through the process the way that, you should, obviously, with all of your due diligence. How do you feel about the knowledgeable assessment result? What would this state about the person? Triple threat, Mara,
Mhm.
as we call it. We call the knowledgeable the triple threat. Tell us a little bit about that, Mara. What do you think?
Well, the knowledgeable has the high persuasive and convincing, high structure routine, high thorough and compliant. As Nolan said, they are the triple threat. So, um, they are they are great for customer service, talking with people. They are good with building that relationship, good with keeping with the routine, following the rules, staying within the boundaries. Um, what I would say about them is that they do worry a lot about what other people think about them. Um, they do need to have those rules and boundaries set out for or set for them. Um, and they can be really great at retention. They can be great at cross selling, upselling. So I think knowledgeables are really good for customer service.
Yeah. Fantastic. There you go. Any other questions there? I see we haven't answered. What are the best traits categories for agency producers? So again, it's going to depend a little bit more about what you're expecting from them, Ronald. But if it's um, a very high call amount, like you're looking them to do a lot of cold calling, a lot of independent prospecting, we would recommend one of those positions that have the high motivation and drive, right? If you're expecting someone to do a lot of cold calling and you want them to hold themselves accountable to that standard, looking at the results like a sales leader, salesperson, closer, persistent, that's a good place to turn. And then, in terms of, I mean, Mara, we've hired great persistence, we've hired great closers, we've hired great
Mhm.
sales leaders, we've hired great salespersons within Ideal Traits. And we certainly have had people that have those personality results that don't work out, right? And that could be for a number of different reasons. But I think that the core construct there, Ronald, that you should look for, if it's a heavily outbound calling role, is that motivation and drive to be there. But Mara, is there anything I'm missing or anything you'd like to correct there?
Nope. I think what you said was spot on.
Perfect. You can tell Mara and I have gone through a lot of interviews together, hundreds, as I mentioned earlier. All right, our final question here, Mara. We got through. How would you use the assess? Oh, sorry, no, more of them have come in. Oh, just beautifully stated. Thank you, Jameson. Appreciate that. And then Tia has one more question. So two more. We're gonna knock out these two more, and then unfortunately we're gonna have to end there. How would you use the personality result to match a personality to another person? So this is a good question. So matching sales agent with an account manager. So when you're talking about sort of getting people to work together, Mara, how do you generally work to pair that up, pair that together?
Um, so usually what I do is, obviously, if these are current employees, I, make sure that they take the assessment. If this is something where, you always want to make sure that you're having everybody in your office take the assessments, but what you want to do is make sure that you are, I guess, filling in those holes, making sure that there is communication. You can have a sales leader and a perfectionist work really well together. It comes down to communication.
Yeah.
With the sales leader, they have that low structure routine, low thorough compliance where the perfectionist can make up for that. So you just want to, and a knowledgeable, can work well with sales leader as well, where they're both communicating. They have that high persuasive and convincing. It's
Yeah.
all about just filling in where somebody else may be lacking.
Yeah. I think it's about transparency too, right?
Mhm.
So allowing those results to be shared within your team,
Mhm.
not to hold that against anybody, right? But then to, let that sales agent and that account manager know how each other communicates and how they'd like to be communicated with, and then allow them to be able to sort of grow within that can really help you too. So using it as a leadership, a management tool can be a really great resource for you too. And again, anything else that we can answer for you on that, please reach out. But our last question, Mara, from Tia. Planners, can you give me any insights on that personality in the service role? I run into them a lot. Planners, We've got a lot of planners in the Ideal Traits team. A very
Mhm.
good personality, generally recommended for that customer service facing role. But Mara, tell us a little bit more based off Tia's question.
So when it comes to planners, they do have that high motivation to drive, high thorough and compliant. So they are very rule oriented. Um, they can get on the phone, make calls. As far as customer service, what I like about a planner for customer service is that when somebody calls in and they are looking for a quote, they give them that quote. And if a person tells them, that's too expensive, etc., they just let them know this is what's going to happen. If you don't have this coverage, they're just very direct and matter of fact with them. So that's why I like planners for that role.
Thank you. All right, great. And again, Tia, reach out to us if you need some more information. I know I've screamed that a lot. But again, in this section, the last thing we want to do is just give you baseline information that isn't really necessarily specific to you and your situation and what needs to happen. Okay. So that's what we want to stay away from. And we want to give you answers to your guys' questions. But throughout this whole thing, we had 41 questions from all of you that attended. I appreciate looks like 54 of you were still on here. So really appreciate you guys sticking around and getting more information on the assessment. Because again, the assessment is meant to help you in your hiring process, to help you protect the time, money, and resources that you're pouring into this. We understand that hiring is not easy, but equipping the resources, such as the assessment that we have to offer for you, will make the process a little bit easier for you. Okay. So I did put my contact information in there, my email and my direct phone number. So if you call that number, you get right to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm happy to help you out the best I can. And I did put in the chat too a little bit of a reminder about that referral program that we have. So if you do know someone that could benefit from information like this, from the assessment or from Ideal Traits in general, please let us know. We'd love to help them out too as well. But it's a pleasure for Mara and I to sit up here. We could be up here for another 3 hours answering your guys' questions because, again, it is something that we're both super passionate about, and everyone at Ideal Traits is passionate about because it's all about helping you make better hires for your business. Okay, so again, we're going to send out the recording and the survey to get feedback. Please do that because we want to tailor content that's specific to the questions and the information that you want to see. But love the participation here in our inaugural episode. Again, 42 questions, a lot of people participating. It's great stuff. So thank you all for sticking around, for joining. And we look forward to obviously doing this every first Tuesday of the month at 2 o'clock. So book your calendar. All right. We'll see you next time. And I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Take care.